Hello, welcome to the Smoking Sun channel. Instead of focusing more on the actual murderer as I have in previous videos, I'll be focusing more on the man that was murdered. But before we get started, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button and notification bell if you enjoyed the content. And here we go. Michael Molloy was born in County Donegal, Ireland. Very little is known about his family in early life, but he found himself living in New York City by the 1920s. Molloy was a former firefighter and, like many in America during the Great Depression, found himself unemployed. Molloy became homeless, living on the streets where he was known for being a heavy drinker. During this time, America was riddled with crime, with the likes of Bonnie and Clyde, John Derringer, and Pretty Boy Floyd all gaining notoriety. In the Bronx, there was a murder trust, which consisted of an owner of a speakeasy named The Mermaid, Tony Marino, his bartender, Joseph Red Murphy, an undertaker named Francis Pasquale, and a patron of The Mermaid, Daniel Kreisberg, a father of three who said he only took part to help his family. Marino and Pasquale would end up concocting a plan to take out life insurance policies on Molloy, who, Pasquale, being an undertaker, saw Molloy as having little life left in him anyway. They figured he would just drink himself to death. The insurance would pay double if the insured died of an accidental death, and this plan was overheard by Kreisberg, so Marino and Pasquale let him in on the plan. Pasquale would take an acquaintance of his shopping for life insurance. This acquaintance would call himself Nicholas Melroy and said that he was a florist, which Pasquale convinced colleagues to verify. After 5 months and a crooked insurance agent, they were able to obtain 3 life insurance policies on Molloy, 1 from Metropolitan Life and 2 from Prudential, all totaling over $3,500. Moreno would get his bartender Murphy to act as next of kin and use the name Joseph Melroy and identify a deceased Michael Molloy as Nicholas Melroy. Moreno offered a gleeful Molloy an unlimited tab at the Mermaid, and telling him that the laws had been relaxed and he was able to offer Molloy such a sweet deal. So they fed him drink after drink, thinking all this alcohol would finally do the trick. When they saw that Molloy could handle his liquor quite well, they decided they had to start poisoning his drinks. So Moreno started putting antifreeze in Molloy's drinks. However, the ethylene glycol, which was a main ingredient of antifreeze at the time, is blocked by ethanol and halts the absorption to the liver and thus having no effect on Molloy. After the failure of antifreeze, they reverted to using turpentine. And again, this had no effect on Molloy. This was followed up by horse liniment, and after that failed, rat poison. And after the rat poison failed, they decided to lace his drinks with wood alcohol, which is pure methanol. And when that failed, Pasquale said he saw a man die after eating raw oysters while drinking whiskey. So they decided to soak raw oysters in that wood alcohol to help aid with a quick death, and provide whiskey to Molloy in hopes that this would finally kill him. Again, Molloy did not succumb to their devious attempts to end his life. So they decided to serve him a sandwich that was laced with rotten sardines, rat poison, and carpet tacks. And it again, like everything else they served Molloy, had no effect. In fact, Molloy had asked for another sandwich. Frustrated by Molloy's iron stomach and the fact that they were starting to run out of time on the insurance policies, they had to come up with yet another plan. So they decided they were going to freeze him to death. Moreno had used the same scheme on a homeless woman named Mabel Carson, whom he convinced to take out a life insurance policy, name him as the benefactor, and he would get her drunk, soak her in cold water, and place her out in the cold where she died, and he collected on her policy. So on a particularly cold night in January of 1933, when it was 14 degrees below zero, they would get Molloy pass out drunk. Then they took him to a park, opened up his shirt to reveal his bare chest, and proceeded to pour 5 gallons of cold water on him and left the scene. Unbeknownst to them, a police patrol had spotted Molloy. They brought him to a homeless shelter. They got him out of the wet clothes and gave him warm clothes to wear. The trust was shocked when Malloy showed up at the Mermaid the next day, so they had to come up with an even better plan. They decided they were going to bribe a taxi driver to hit Malloy, and then they found Hershey Green and bribed him with $150 to use his taxi and run over Malloy in the hopes that this finally did the job. So with Green behind the wheel, and after 2 previous failed attempts where Malloy avoided the taxi, Green sped to nearly 50 miles an hour and hit Malloy, carrying 2 thumps. Green would back up and run over Malloy again just to be certain. When other cars started coming around, Green got scared and the taxi sped off. Thinking that this finally did the job, and for the next few days looking in the newspaper's obituaries for confirmation, they were surprised that nothing was mentioned. That's because Malloy yet again survived their murderous plan. He would spend a total of 3 weeks in the hospital after breaking several bones, and also had no memory of even being hit. Then, in the late evening of February 22nd, 1933, and after approximately 7 months and 9 failed attempts, the trust decided enough was enough. So after Malloy had passed out, they brought him back to Murphy's room, stuck a hose in his mouth that was connected to a gas light, wrapped his face with a damp towel, and proceeded to fill his lungs with gas. And after approximately an hour, this would be what finally ended Malloy's life. His death was ruled an accidental death from lobar pneumonia by a Dr. Frank Manzella, who signed the death certificate for a $100 bribe from Marino. Marino would throw Malloy a cheap funeral for $10 and had him buried in a $12 plot. He even refused to pay to allow Malloy's body to be embalmed, and he was quickly buried. On March 18th, 1933, gangster Tough Tony Bastone was shot dead. He knew and was known by everyone at the Mermaid. A Joseph Maglione was arrested and charged with his murder, and Murphy was brought in as a material witness. It was during this time that Prudential Insurance was looking for a Joseph Melroy to pay out the remaining 2 policies. This caused suspicion. Meanwhile, word had spread of Mike the Durable and about the murder trust. Police spoke with patrons of local speakeasies who heard stories of the man who continually cheated death. And after learning that Mike Malloy had died under curious circumstances, they exhumed his body and a forensic examination followed. The examiner found Malloy's body had cherry-like red discoloration and ruled it a death by asphyxiation of carbon monoxide. Ironically, if Pasquale had embalmed Malloy's body, the red discoloration would not have even showed up. The 5 men were arrested the next day and charged with first-degree murder. And at the trial, 2 taxi drivers that denied the trust's earlier bribes to run over Malloy before Green accepted the deal testified at the trial that would help convict the trust, all of whom would be found guilty. Tony Marino, Joseph Red Murphy, Francis Pasquale, and Daniel Kreisberg were sentenced to death by electric chair, and taxi driver Hershey Green was sentenced to 5 to 10 years after turning state witnesses and accepting a lower charge of first-degree assault for running over Malloy with his taxi. Dr. Manzella was given a lower charge of accessory after the fact. Marino, Pasquale, and Kreisberg were put to death on June 7, 1934, and Murphy, after several stays, was finally put to death on July 5, 1934. And, unlike Malloy, they all died the first try. The story of Mike Malloy has intrigued many over the years, from the time it appeared in the papers in 1933 to today. Malloy would earn several nicknames, including the aforementioned Mike the Durable, along with Iron Mike, the Juggernaut, and the Irish Rasputin, making him one of the most unusual murderers in the U.S. history. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. See you next time.